Vanessa Guillen, a name etched in memory, synonymous with courage, tragedy, and a fight for justice that reverberated across the nation. This is her story. A young woman who, like many others, dared to dream of a life dedicated to service, her heart set on the prestigious halls of the United States Army. Vanessa's journey began with a promise to protect and serve her country. It was a promise born from patriotism, from a deep-seated belief in the ideals of honor and duty that the military embodied. Her family, her backbone, and her strength stood by her side, their hearts brimming with pride as she embarked on this challenging path. To Vanessa, joining the Army wasn't merely a career choice, it was a calling. The military represented a gateway to a better life, a chance to rise above her circumstances and build a future filled with purpose and meaning. She envisioned a world where her efforts, her sacrifices, would contribute to something larger than herself. Little did she know that her journey, paved with good intentions and unwavering dedication, would take a sinister turn, leading her down a path fraught with danger and shrouded in darkness. This is the story of how a dream, vibrant and full of hope, turned into a nightmare that exposed the dark underbelly of a system sworn to protect. Fort Hood, Texas. A sprawling testament to military might, home to thousands of soldiers and a symbol of American military power. Its vast training grounds and state-of-the-art facilities have been a crucible for generations of soldiers, forging them into the fighting force that defends the nation. For Vanessa, Fort Hood represented a world of possibilities. It was here, amidst the rigor and discipline of military life, that she hoped to hone her skills, rise through the ranks, and make her mark on the world. The base hummed with activity, a constant reminder of the important role it played in national defense. She found camaraderie amongst her fellow soldiers, a sense of belonging within the ranks of those who understood the sacrifices and challenges of military life. Together, they trained, they learned, they forged bonds that ran deep, united by their shared commitment to duty and country. Fort Hood, however, harbored a darker secret, a hidden truth that lurked beneath its surface of order and discipline, whispers of misconduct, of harassment, and of a culture that often silenced victims circulated in hushed tones. It was a reality that Vanessa, filled with the idealism of youth, was about to confront head-on. As Vanessa acclimated to life at Fort Hood, a sense of unease began to creep into her days. The whispers she had heard, dismissed at first as mere rumors, began to take on a more sinister tone. Her once unwavering enthusiasm was slowly replaced with a growing sense of dread. There were whispers of inappropriate behavior, of unwanted advances, and of a system that seemed more interested in protecting its own than seeking justice for the vulnerable. These whispers, though unspoken directly to Vanessa, created an atmosphere of fear, a palpable tension that hung heavy in the air. Vanessa found herself increasingly isolated, her once bright spirit slowly dimming under the weight of an unspoken threat. The very institution that was supposed to protect her, to empower her, now felt like a cage, trapping her in a nightmare she couldn't escape. Unbeknownst to her family, who remained blissfully unaware of her plight, Vanessa was fighting a battle on two fronts. She was grappling with the demands of military life while simultaneously navigating the treacherous waters of harassment and fear, her dreams of a brighter future slowly slipping away. Despite the unsettling undercurrents at Fort Hood, Vanessa remained committed to her duties. She threw herself into her training, her natural athleticism and sharp mind quickly setting her apart as a model soldier. Her superiors recognized her potential, commending her work ethic and dedication to excellence. Vanessa's days were long and demanding, filled with physical training, weapons drills, and classroom instruction. She excelled in every aspect, her determination fueled by a desire to prove herself worthy of the uniform she wore. Her fellow soldiers, recognizing her unwavering commitment, developed a deep respect for the quiet young woman who always seemed to push herself beyond her limits. Beyond her physical abilities, Vanessa possessed a keen intellect. She absorbed knowledge quickly, mastering complex military strategies and tactics. Her superiors saw in her the potential for leadership, often entrusting her with responsibilities beyond her rank. Vanessa never shied away from a challenge, her ambition a driving force in her pursuit of excellence. Vanessa's dedication to her duties, however, masked a growing fear, a secret she felt unable to share. The whispers of harassment she had heard, the unsettling feeling of being watched, began to cast a shadow over her accomplishments, threatening to derail the future she had worked so hard to build. Despite her outward success, a darkness had begun to seep into Vanessa's life at Fort Hood. The camaraderie she once felt with her fellow soldiers was strained by an unspoken tension, a fear she couldn't quite place but felt acutely. Her once bright smile now appeared less frequently, replaced by a look of worry that hinted at a deeper struggle. The harassment, at first subtle and insidious, began to escalate. Offensive comments, inappropriate advances, and a constant feeling of being objectified became an unwelcome part of her daily routine. The fear that had once been a whisper now roared in her ears, silencing her voice and paralyzing her with doubt. Vanessa felt trapped, caught in a system that seemed designed to protect its own, rather than those who served within its ranks. She knew that reporting the harassment could have dire consequences, potentially jeopardizing her career and exposing her to retaliation. The very institution she had pledged to serve now felt like a threat, a predator lurking in the shadows. The weight of her secret, the burden of her unspoken truth, became a heavy cloak she carried everywhere. Vanessa's dreams of a brighter future, once so clear and attainable, now seemed distant and unattainable, obscured by the darkness that had enveloped her life at Fort Hood. In hushed tones, Vanessa confided in a few trusted friends, sharing fragments of her ordeal, hoping for support, for guidance. But their reactions, often tinged with fear and uncertainty, offered little solace. They spoke of a culture of silence, of a system that protected perpetrators and silenced victims. The fear of retaliation was palpable, a suffocating blanket that stifled any hope of justice. Vanessa was warned of the potential consequences of speaking out, of the damage it could inflict on her career, her reputation, her life. The message was clear: stay silent, endure, and hope that it would eventually stop. Vanessa's pleas for help, whispered in confidence, seemed to disappear into the vastness of Fort Hood, swallowed by a system that seemed more concerned with protecting its image than addressing the cries of its own. Her trust in the institution she had pledged her life to was slowly eroding, replaced by a growing sense of disillusionment and despair. The isolation she felt was all-consuming. Surrounded by hundreds, even thousands of fellow soldiers, Vanessa had never felt so alone. The silence, deafening in its totality, became her constant companion, a heavy weight that pressed down on her spirit, extinguishing her hope. Despite the warnings, despite the pervasive culture of silence, a flicker of defiance began to ignite within Vanessa. The injustice of her situation, the realization that she was not alone in her suffering, fueled a growing anger, a refusal to be another silenced victim. Vanessa's story, though whispered in hushed tones, began to resonate with others. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into conversations. The seeds of doubt, sown in the fertile ground of shared experiences, began to take root, challenging the established order, questioning the very foundations of power and authority. The official narrative, one of safety and support, began to crumble under the weight of shared truths. The cracks in the facade of Fort Hood, long present but skillfully concealed, were beginning to show, revealing a darkness that could no longer be ignored. And so, the stage was set for a confrontation, a clash between the forces of silence and the burgeoning movement for truth and justice. Vanessa Guillen, once a symbol of hope and ambition, was unwittingly becoming a catalyst for change, her story igniting a fire that would illuminate the darkest corners of Fort Hood and beyond. April 22, 2020 dawned like any other day at Fort Hood. The Texas sun beat down on the sprawling base as soldiers went about their routines, their footsteps echoing across the vast parade grounds. Vanessa Guillen, her youthful face etched with a weariness that belied her 20 years, prepared for another day of duty. Her steps, usually light and quick, seemed heavier this morning, her mind preoccupied with the unspoken dread that had become her constant companion. She had confided in her mother Gloria about the harassment, her voice trembling as she shared her fears over the phone. Gloria's words, filled with a mother's fierce love and unwavering support, echoed in Vanessa's ears. "Be strong, Mihija. We will get through this." Vanessa went through the motions of her morning routine with practiced precision. Every button, every buckle, fastened with a care that bordered on ritual. The familiar act of preparing her uniform, once a source of pride, now felt like a charade, a mask she wore to conceal the turmoil raging within. She had a duty to fulfill, a responsibility to her country, to her fellow soldiers. Vanessa, ever the dutiful soldier, pushed aside her fear, her anxiety a knot in her stomach, and stepped across the threshold into the armory, unaware that she was walking into the abyss. As afternoon descended upon Fort Hood, casting long shadows across the base, a sense of unease began to settle over those who knew Vanessa best. Her usual cheerful demeanor, her infectious laugh, were noticeably absent. The day wore on, each passing hour marked by a growing sense of dread. Concern turned to alarm when Vanessa failed to return to her barracks that evening. Her bunk, usually meticulously tidy, remained untouched. Her personal belongings, carefully arranged, stood as a silent testament to her sudden disappearance. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped the hearts of her friends. Word of Vanessa's absence spread like wildfire through the ranks. Frantic calls were made, messages exchanged, but no one had seen her since she entered the armory earlier that day. The initial confusion quickly morphed into a chilling realization. Vanessa Guillen was missing. As darkness enveloped Fort Hood, casting an unsettling pall over the usually vibrant base, the search for Vanessa Guillen began. But with every passing moment, with each dead end, the hope of finding her safe and sound dwindled, replaced by a growing sense of dread. The disappearance of Vanessa Guillen sent shockwaves through Fort Hood. The initial disbelief quickly gave way to a frantic search as military police swarmed the base, their faces grim, their movements betraying a sense of urgency. Every corner, every building, every shadow was scrutinized, but Vanessa remained elusive. The armory, where Vanessa was last seen, became the epicenter of the investigation. Forensic teams meticulously combed through the building, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, searching for any clue, any trace of the missing soldier. Every locker, every weapon rack, every inch of the vast space was examined, but the armory yielded no answers, only a haunting silence. Outside, in the harsh glare of the Texas sun, search parties fanned out across the vast expanse of Fort Hood, their eyes scanning the ground, their voices calling out Vanessa's name. Dogs barked, helicopters whirred overhead, but the relentless search yielded no trace of the missing soldier. Days turned into nights, and still, there was no sign of Vanessa. The initial shock and disbelief gave way to a gnawing fear that something terrible had happened. The silence from Fort Hood, the lack of answers, only fueled the growing suspicion that something was amiss.
As the days stretched into weeks, the silence from Fort Hood became deafening. The Guillen family, their faces etched with worry and frustration, pleaded for answers, their voices raw with emotion. Vanessa's mother, Gloria, a tower of strength amidst the chaos, refused to give up hope. Her unwavering belief in her daughter's return, her only solace.
The media, initially slow to pick up the story, descended upon the small town of Killeen, just outside the gates of Fort Hood, drawn by the mystery surrounding Vanessa's disappearance. Questions swirled about the military's handling of the case, about the lack of transparency, about the possibility that Vanessa's disappearance was more than just a missing persons case.
The hashtag #FindVanessaGuillen began to trend on social media, amplified by the voices of those demanding justice for the missing soldier. Celebrities, politicians, and ordinary citizens alike joined the chorus, their voices adding to the growing pressure on Fort Hood to provide answers.
The Guillen family, their grief palpable, their resilience inspiring, refused to let their daughter's case be forgotten. They organized rallies, spoke at press conferences, and met with anyone who would listen, their determination to find Vanessa fueled by an unwavering belief that the truth, however painful, would eventually come to light. In the digital age where information travels at the speed of light, the Guillen family recognized the power of social media to amplify their message and rally support. The hashtag #Justice for Vanessa Guillen became a rallying cry, a digital beacon that drew attention to Vanessa's case and the systemic issues it exposed. Social media platforms became virtual megaphones, amplifying the voices of the Guillen family and their supporters. Celebrities, influencers, and ordinary citizens alike shared Vanessa's story, their posts reaching millions, transforming a local tragedy into a national conversation. The online community, moved by the Guillen family's plight, rallied behind them, organizing online campaigns, sharing news articles, and demanding answers from Fort Hood and the U.S. Army. Petitions circulated, gathering hundreds of thousands of signatures, demanding a thorough and transparent investigation into Vanessa's disappearance. The digital world, often criticized for its superficiality, became a powerful tool for activism and accountability. The Guillen family, embracing the power of social media, ensured that their daughter's story and their fight for justice would be heard far beyond the gates of Fort Hood. The Guillen family's unwavering pursuit of justice resonated far beyond the digital realm. Their story, a tragic reflection of the struggles faced by countless families across the country, galvanized communities and ignited a national dialogue about sexual harassment, assault, and the systemic failures that allow such abuses to persist.
Local activists, community leaders, and elected officials, recognizing the deep-seated issues exposed by Vanessa's case, joined forces with the Guillen family, their collective voices amplifying the demand for justice. Rallies and vigils were held in cities across the country, each gathering a testament to the power of solidarity and shared outrage.
The Latino community, in particular, felt a profound sense of solidarity with the Guillen family, recognizing the systemic barriers and cultural stigmas that often prevent victims from coming forward. Vanessa's story became a catalyst for a long-overdue conversation about the unique challenges faced by minorities serving in the military.
Vanessa Guillen's disappearance, once a local tragedy, had awakened a nation, forcing it to confront uncomfortable truths about power, abuse, and the often invisible victims silenced by fear and institutional indifference.
The Guillen family's relentless pursuit of justice, amplified by a growing chorus of supporters, put immense pressure on Fort Hood and the U.S. Army to address the systemic failures that allowed Vanessa's disappearance and murder to occur. The whispers of discontent that had long circulated within the ranks now echoed with the roar of public outrage.
Lawmakers, feeling the heat of public scrutiny, launched investigations into the culture at Fort Hood and the military's handling of sexual assault cases. The Guillen family, their voices unwavering, testified before Congress, their harrowing account of their ordeal exposing the deep-seated flaws within the system.
The Army, facing mounting pressure and a tarnished reputation, was forced to acknowledge the need for change. Internal reviews were conducted, new policies were implemented, and resources were allocated to address sexual assault and harassment within the ranks.
The fight for justice for Vanessa Guillen had become a fight for systemic change, a movement to ensure that no other family would have to endure the pain and anguish the Guillen family had faced. Their courage, their unwavering pursuit of the truth, had ignited a fire that would not be easily extinguished.
Weeks turned into months, and the search for Vanessa Guillen continued, a relentless pursuit fueled by a glimmer of hope that she might still be found alive. Volunteers, their spirits buoyed by the Guillen family's unwavering faith, joined military personnel in combing through vast stretches of Texas terrain, their every step a prayer for her safe return. The community, their hearts heavy with a shared sense of loss, rallied around the Guillen family, offering words of comfort, prayers for her safe return, and unwavering support for their fight for justice. Candlelight vigils, their flickering flames a testament to the enduring hope that Vanessa was still out there, became a regular occurrence, each gathering a poignant reminder of the young woman's absence. Yet, even as they clung to hope, a chilling reality began to set in. The passage of time, each day that passed without a sign of Vanessa, chipped away at the edges of optimism, casting a long shadow of doubt over the possibility of finding her alive. The search, once a beacon of hope, began to take on the grim reality of a recovery mission. Then, on June 30th, 2020, almost 2 agonizing months after Vanessa's disappearance, a gruesome discovery shattered the fragile hope that had sustained her family and a community holding its breath. The news, delivered with somber words and heavy hearts, sent shockwaves through the nation, confirming their worst fears. Section 2. Uncovering the unthinkable. The discovery of human remains, partially buried near the banks of the Leon River, some 20 miles from Fort Hood, marked a tragic turning point in the search for Vanessa Guillen. The idyllic Texas landscape, once a symbol of hope and possibility, now stood as a silent witness to a horrific crime, its beauty forever marred by the darkness that had unfolded there. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of grief, anger, and disbelief. The world watched, their hearts heavy with a shared sense of horror. As forensic experts, their faces etched with grim determination, worked tirelessly to identify the remains and uncover the truth behind Vanessa's disappearance. The confirmation, delivered with somber words and heavy hearts, that the remains belonged to Vanessa Guillen shattered the fragile hope that had sustained her family and a community holding its breath. The young woman who had walked onto Fort Hood with dreams of serving her country was gone, her life tragically cut short, her promising future extinguished. Section 3. A web of deceit unraveled. As investigators delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding Vanessa Guillen's murder, a web of deceit began to unravel, revealing a sinister plot and a calculated attempt to cover up a horrific crime. The investigation, initially hampered by a lack of cooperation and a culture of silence within Fort Hood, slowly began to yield answers, each revelation more shocking than the last.
The finger of suspicion quickly pointed to SPC. Aaron Robinson, a fellow soldier stationed at Fort Hood who had worked alongside Vanessa in the armory. Robinson, initially evasive and uncooperative with investigators, soon emerged as the prime suspect in her disappearance and murder. His girlfriend, Cecily Aguilar, would later tell investigators a chilling tale of a crime of passion, alleging that Robinson had bludgeoned Vanessa to death inside the armory after she threatened to report him for sexual harassment. Aguilar, implicated in the gruesome cover-up, claimed that Robinson had enlisted her help in dismembering and disposing of Vanessa's body.
Section 4. Justice delayed, a family shattered. The revelation that Vanessa Guillen had not only been murdered but that her body had been brutally dismembered and disposed of like trash sent shockwaves of horror and disgust throughout the nation. The Guillen family, their worst fears confirmed, was left to grapple with the unimaginable, their grief compounded by the brutal nature of their daughter's death. Public outrage, fueled by the gruesome details of the crime and the alleged cover-up, reached a fever pitch. Protests erupted across the country, with thousands demanding justice for Vanessa and accountability from the military, their voices a powerful testament to the collective grief and anger that had gripped the nation. Yet, even as the investigation progressed and the truth behind Vanessa's murder came to light, justice remained elusive. Robinson, evading arrest, took his own life as authorities closed in, his suicide a final act of cowardice that denied the Guillen family the closure they desperately craved.
Vanessa's case, a tragic reminder of the human cost of systemic failure, exposed the deep-seated issues of sexual harassment, assault, and a culture of silence within the military. Her death, while a devastating loss, ignited a movement for change, a collective demand for accountability and reform that would resonate far beyond the gates of Fort Hood.
The horrific truth of Vanessa Guillen's murder sent shockwaves through the nation, casting a harsh spotlight on Fort Hood and its troubled history. The investigation, initially focused on finding Vanessa, now shifted to uncovering the systemic failures that had allowed such a tragedy to occur within the supposed safety of a military base. The media scrutiny was relentless, with reporters camped outside the gates of Fort Hood, their cameras capturing the comings and goings, their microphones thrust towards anyone willing to speak about the culture within the base. The Army, facing mounting pressure from the public, lawmakers, and the Guillen family, could no longer ignore the calls for transparency and accountability. A series of investigations, both internal and independent, were launched, their scope encompassing everything from the handling of sexual harassment and assault cases to the overall command climate at Fort Hood. The findings, released to the public in a scathing report, painted a damning picture of a base plagued by leadership failures, a culture of fear and retaliation, and a systemic disregard for the safety and well-being of its soldiers.
The report revealed that Fort Hood had one of the highest rates of sexual assault, harassment, and violence among Army installations. It spoke of a culture where victims were often afraid to come forward, fearing retaliation or disbelief, and where perpetrators were rarely held accountable for their actions. The investigation exposed a deeply troubling reality that extended far beyond the tragic case of Vanessa Guillen.
The investigations into Fort Hood ripped open a wound that had been festering within the military for far too long, exposing a deeply ingrained culture of silence surrounding sexual assault and harassment. The stories that emerged, both from Fort Hood and other military installations, were eerily similar, painting a disturbing picture of a system that often protected perpetrators and silenced victims.
Service members, both men and women, came forward to share their own experiences, their voices trembling with a mix of anger, sadness, and a sense of betrayal. They spoke of the fear of retaliation, the pressure to remain silent, and the devastating impact that reporting sexual assault or harassment could have on their careers.
The stories revealed a culture where sexual harassment and assault were often normalized, dismissed as part of the job, or brushed aside by those in positions of power. Victims spoke of feeling isolated, disbelieved, and even blamed for the abuse they had suffered.
The emotional toll, often invisible to the outside world, left many struggling with PTSD, depression, and suicidal thoughts.
The revelation sparked a national conversation about the prevalence of sexual misconduct within the military and the urgent need for systemic change. The Guillen family's unwavering pursuit of justice had given voice to countless others who had suffered in silence for far too long, their stories a stark reminder of the human cost of inaction. The Guillen family, thrust into the national spotlight by the tragedy of their daughter's death, channeled their grief into a powerful force for change. They became tireless advocates for military reform, their voices echoing through the halls of Congress as they demanded justice for Vanessa and accountability for those who had failed her. Working closely with lawmakers, the Guillen family championed the I Am Vanessa Guillen bill, a comprehensive piece of legislation aimed at overhauling the military's handling of sexual assault and harassment cases.
The bill, introduced in both the House and Senate, sought to remove the chain of command from the process of reporting and investigating sexual misconduct allegations, instead establishing an independent and impartial system.
The bill faced opposition from some within the military establishment who argued that removing the chain of command would undermine order and discipline. However, the Guillen family's unwavering advocacy, coupled with the public outcry over Vanessa's death and the systemic issues it exposed, proved to be a powerful force for change.
In December 2020, the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act was included as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, marking a significant victory for the Guillen family and a testament to their unwavering commitment to honoring their daughter's legacy by fighting for meaningful reform within the military.
The legacy of Vanessa Guillen extends far beyond the tragic circumstances of her death. Her story, a stark reminder of the human cost of institutional failure, became a catalyst for change, igniting a movement that continues to resonate within the military and beyond.
Vanessa's name has become synonymous with the fight against sexual assault and harassment within the military, her story serving as a rallying cry for survivors and advocates demanding accountability and systemic change.
Her death, while a devastating loss, sparked a national conversation, forcing the military to confront its demons and take meaningful steps towards creating a safer and more just environment for all service members.
The reforms enacted in the wake of her death, while a step in the right direction, are just the beginning of a long and arduous journey towards creating a military where sexual assault and harassment are not tolerated.
The fight for justice for Vanessa Guillen continues, fueled by the unwavering commitment of her family, the courage of survivors who refuse to be silenced, and the unwavering belief that change is possible, even in the face of unimaginable loss.
Vanessa Guillen's legacy is a testament to the power of speaking truth to power, of challenging the status quo, and of never giving up hope for a better tomorrow.
Her story, born of tragedy, has become a seed of change, watered with tears and nurtured by the unwavering belief that justice, though often delayed, will ultimately prevail.
The shockwaves from Vanessa Guillen's murder reverberated far beyond the confines of Fort Hood, sparking a nationwide movement that transcended geographical boundaries and cultural differences.
The hashtag #IamVanessaGuillen, once a whisper of solidarity, became a roar of defiance, uniting millions across the country and around the world in a shared demand for justice and accountability.
Vanessa's story struck a chord with countless individuals who had suffered in silence, their voices stifled by fear, shame, or a system that often protected perpetrators rather than victims.
The movement became a platform for sharing these stories, for amplifying the voices of survivors, and for demanding that their experiences be acknowledged and addressed.
Veterans, often hesitant to speak out about their own experiences, found strength and solidarity in Vanessa's story. They organized marches, spoke at rallies, and shared their own harrowing accounts of sexual assault and harassment within the military, their voices adding weight and urgency to the growing demand for reform.
The movement, fueled by social media and amplified by traditional news outlets, brought renewed attention to the issue of sexual misconduct within the military, prompting calls for congressional hearings, independent investigations, and legislative action.
Vanessa's name became synonymous with the fight for justice, her legacy intertwined with the pursuit of a safer and more equitable military for all.
Vanessa Guillen's legacy is one of both profound loss and enduring hope. Her tragic death, while a stark reminder of the systemic failures that allowed such a tragedy to occur, ignited a movement that continues to push for meaningful change within the military and beyond.
The reforms enacted in the wake of her death, including changes to how sexual assault and harassment cases are handled within the military justice system, represent a step towards creating a safer and more accountable environment for service members. However, the fight for justice for Vanessa and for all victims of military sexual misconduct is far from over.
The movement Vanessa inspired continues to advocate for greater transparency, accountability, and support for survivors. Organizations dedicated to ending sexual violence within the military have gained momentum, providing resources, advocacy, and a platform for survivors to share their stories and demand justice.
Vanessa Guillen's light shines on, a beacon of hope and a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable tragedy, the pursuit of justice, equality, and a world free from violence must continue. Her legacy serves as a call to action, a reminder that silence is not an option, and that together, we can create a world where all who serve their country are treated with dignity, respect, and unwavering support.
Vanessa Guillen's story is a stark reminder of the human cost of institutional failure, a testament to the devastating consequences of silence and indifference. Her life, tragically cut short, ignited a firestorm that exposed the dark underbelly of a system entrusted with protecting those who serve.
Vanessa's legacy, however, is one of courage, resilience, and an unwavering pursuit of justice. Her name has become synonymous with a movement, a collective demand for accountability, transparency, and an end to the culture of silence that has plagued the military for far too long.
The world watched as a family, united in their grief, transformed their pain into action. They refused to be silenced, their voices rising above the din of indifference, demanding answers, demanding change, demanding justice for their daughter and for all those who had suffered in silence.
Vanessa's story resonated with countless individuals, each carrying their own burdens, their own scars, their own stories of pain and injustice. Her name became a rallying cry, a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable loss, the pursuit of a just and equitable world must continue.
The fight for justice for Vanessa Guillen is far from over. The reforms enacted in the wake of her death, while a step in the right direction, are just the beginning of a long and arduous journey towards dismantling the systems and structures that allow sexual violence to persist. The movement Vanessa ignited continues to push for greater transparency, accountability, and support for survivors. It is a movement that demands a fundamental shift in culture, a dismantling of the power dynamics that allow abuse to flourish, and a commitment to creating a world where all who serve their country are treated with dignity, respect, and unwavering support. Vanessa Guillen's legacy is a call to action, a reminder that silence is not an option. It is a call to stand with survivors, to amplify their voices, to demand justice, and to never stop fighting for a world where everyone, regardless of gender, race, or rank, can serve their country with dignity and without fear. Vanessa's light continues to shine, illuminating a path forward, guiding us towards a future where her story, and the stories of countless others who have suffered in silence, will serve as a catalyst for lasting change. Her memory, a beacon of hope and resilience, reminds us that even in the face of darkness, the pursuit of justice must never cease.